Good day, everyone. So, our topic is all about curricular reforms in teacher education, which is focused on OBE or outcome-based education. So, we have the idea of what is OBE since we already know this from our subject assessment of learning. So our desired learning outcomes define what is outcome-based education as this apply to teacher education. Next is analyze the four principles in outcome-based education. Third, describe how teaching and learning relate to OBE. Fourth, explain how the achieved learning outcomes will be assessed. Fifth, summarize the prospective teacher's rules and responsibility in the implementation of outcome-based education. So, in recent years, there has been increasing attention on outcome-based education for several reasons. This includes return of investment and accountability or responsibility, which are driven by political, economic, and educational reasons. So, in our country, some of institution use this OBE because it focus on learner. So it is centered, learner centered, which is much more effective for the learner for their learning. Definition of outcome-based education by Speedy 1994, he defined OBE as clearly focusing and organizing everything in the educational system around the essential for all the students to do successfully at the end of their learning experiences. So, the OBE focus on our objective because there in our objectives we have the learning competency, um, performance standard, content standard. So we should achieve that one or in order for us to do successfully at the end of their learning experiences. Since that objectives or that outcomes is focused only to the learner, not to us as a teacher. It starts with a clear picture of what is important for students to be able to do. Then organizing the curriculum, instruction, and assessment to make sure that learning is happen. So, the curriculum, instruction, and assessment, excuse me, is always unconnected so that learning will happen. So this definition clearly points to the desired results of education, which are learning outcomes. So, as what I said a while ago, these are made of knowledge, understanding, skills, and attitude. So, cognitive, psychomotor, and affective should acquire to make them their full potential and lead fulfilling lives as an individual in the community and at work. So our focus as a future teacher is to give our students a good and quality learning and to use their learning for the future. To define and clarify further, answer to the following question should be addressed by the teacher. So this is for the teacher on how they will use OBE. So first is what do we want these students to learn? So what learning we should teach to our students. Number two, why do we want students to learn these things? So what our purpose of giving this task or giving this lesson? How can we best help students to learn these things? So what we can do to help the students to learn, what instructional method are you going to do? And fourth, how will you know when the students have learned? So how will you know if your students learn? Example, if they are active in your class, and also if they got higher score in your activity, they are socially oriented in your class. Speedy premised that in outcome-based education, we have all students can learn and succeed, but not all the same time or in the same way. So our students are in different diversity, or we have we call diversity of learning, and we have that we call different teaching style or learning style. So some of our students learn in audio or and visual, and not all the same time or in the same way. So we have the students that very slow in their learning, and some are fast or fast learner. Now, second is successful learning promotes even more successful learning. So the successful learning promotes successful learning also, and it will be more effective. Next is schools and teacher controls the condition that will determine if the students are successful in school learning. So the schools and the teacher facilitate the learning of our students. There are four essential principles in OBE. In principle 1, it is clarity of focus. So we have a clear focus on what teacher wants students to learn is the primary principle in OBE. So what focus should we have to give for our students? What focus? So teachers should bear in mind that the outcomes of teaching is learning. Like for example, I mean we have in our lesson plan we have the uh, content standard, performance standard, and learning competencies. So that is our clarity of focus or clear focus to students, enable them to achieve our outcome based, and also to able them to acquire our learning uh, effectively. Principle number 2, designing backwards. So this principle is related to the first. At the beginning of the curriculum design, the learning outcomes has to be clearly defined. So it is clearly defined. Next is principle 3, high expectation. So we have the high expectation for our students, establishing high expectation, challenging standard of performance while encourage students to learn better. So as a future teacher, we have to establish high expectation. We should expect that our students learn from your topic, and then they will get higher score in your activity, and they also understand your uh, lesson. Principle 4, expanded opportunities. In OBE, all students are expected to excel. Hence, equal expanded opportunity should be provided. So, we expect that our students excel in our class, because this is the evidence that we are effective educators. So, learners as advocates of multiple intelligence says, every child has genius in him, herself, hence is capable of doing the best. So, uh, every child their own intelligence or their own potential, but we as a teacher, we can able them to cultivate their potential. That is our mission or job to do for our learner, to nurture them. Teaching learning in OBE. So teaching is learning if learners learn. Learning is measured by its outcome. So it is measured by its outcome or learning objectives. Whatever approach to learning is used, the intent should focus on learning rather than on teaching. So, because we are focused on learner-centered, we should focus also on learning rather than teaching, because in learning, only focus on learner, and teaching only focus to teacher. So, because we are in the OBE or outcome-based education, we focus on learner. So, this is how how the learn this is how the teaching learning be done in OBE. So teacher must prepare students adequately. This can't be done if the teacher know what they want the students to learn and what learners comes to achieve. Prerequisite knowledge is important, thus review is necessary at the start of the lesson. The prior knowledge of our students is cultivate before we proceed to the discussion, and also the previous knowledge of our students. So we have to connect our previous lesson to the next lesson you have to tackle. So teacher must create positive learning environments. So students should feel that regardless of individual uniqueness, the teacher is always there to help. So we have to build the learning environment or good learning environment, enable them to feel that we are an open hands, or we are a good mother or a father to our learner. Teacher must help their students to understand what they have to learn, why they should learn, what is the use it will be now and in the future, and how they will know that they have learned. So we help their students to understand the reason why we should teach this one and why they should understand this lesson. So teacher must use variety of teaching methods. So teacher must use teaching methods, different teaching methods, since not all students are in the same teaching style or learning style. So um, we should adjust that one for our learner. The teacher must provide students with enough opportunities to use new knowledge and skills that they gain. So when students do this, they can explore with new learning, correct errors, adjust their thinking. So we should provide opportunities to our students to use their knowledge and skills, or new knowledge and skills. Like for example, or giving them an assigned task, and they will use their new knowledge in order to them to much develop their skills. Okay, so teacher must help students to bring each learning to personal closure that will make them aware of what they learn. So we should give them the closure that they may be aware of what they are learning. Here are additional key points in teaching learning in OBE, which shows the shift from traditional to an OBE view. So from traditional to OBE view. So from instructional and OBE, it is to learning. Next is input and resources. In OBE, learning outcomes. Knowledge is transferred by teacher, or by it is teacher centered, but the OBE knowledge is already exists in the mind of the learner. So the knowledge is already exists in learner. Teacher dispense in knowledge. The OBE, teacher are designers of method. Teacher as students are independent and isolation. In OBE, teacher and students work in team. So if you notice that from traditional view, it only more focus on teacher, on how they teach. But the OBE or recent view, we focus on learner. Assessment of learning outcomes in OBE. So this is how we assess or give assessment to our students. Assessment in OBE should be guided by four principles of OBE, which are clarity of focus, designing backwards, high expectation, expanding opportunities. We tackle this one. This is the four principle a while ago. It should contribute to the objectives of improvement students' learning. Since in OBE, there is need first to establish a clear vision of what the students are expected to learn. or desired learning outcomes. Then assessment becomes a immediate part of the system. To be useful in OB system, assessment should be guided by the following principle. One, assessment procedure should be valid. So, procedure and tools should actually assist what one intended to test. So, our assessment should be valid, or we should use a proper tools, instructional planning or instructional materials for our students to be valid. So like for example, we give them a quiz. Our quiz is the evidence that number two, assessment procedure should be reliable. The results should be consistent. So it must be reliable. If your students score in pretest on your prior knowledge, they score high grades, it is expected that they still got the highest score, more high score in your exam. So that will be reliable, or that will be the evidence that you are a good teacher and your subject is good to them. Assessment procedure should be fair. Cultural backgrounds and other factors should not influence assessment procedure. So assessment should be fair. So what you give to the learner one should be given to learner two. Assessment should reflect the knowledge and skills that are important to the student. So it should reflect to the knowledge and skills for the students. 5, assessment should tell both the teacher and student how students are progressing. So you should tell your students if they progress, or they develop something, or their ability is already cultivated. Another one is assessment should support every student's opportunity to learn things that are important. So they have the assessment should support every student's opportunity to learn. An assessment should allow individuality or uniqueness to be demonstrated. Number 3, assessment should be comprehensive to cover a wide range of learning outcomes. So, learning responsibility for learning. NABI students are responsible for their own learning and progress. So, as what I've said a while ago, that every child has a genuine in him, in herself, he is capable of doing the best. So, every child has his own capable and potential. So, it is what our job is to make our learner develop and progress from you. It is only the learner himself or herself who can drive himself or herself to learn. Thus, learning is personal matter. So it is all in the learner. We as a teacher only facilitate the learning. So in terms of students' perspective, are common questions that will be guided them as they learn under the OBE curriculum framework. To students in OBE learning, they should ask themselves following question. For student, 1, what do I have learned? What do you have learned? Why do I have to learn it? What is the reason? What will I be doing while I am learning? How will I know that I am learning what I should be learning? Will I have any say in what I learn? How will I assess it? So this is already a self-explanatory. That would be all. Thank you and God bless.